Okay, you guys, let's go. Let's go. Okay, let's pop this up. Here we go. Let's take it away. Okay, here we go. This started with a tweet by Jan Nepomniachtchi in relation to Abhimanyu. I believe I'm pronouncing that wrong, surely. Um, but it says it was about the new Grandmaster record that was set very recently. It says, "I'm dazzled with the new record, so I'd like to suggest some changes to the order of conferring titles. For example, one of the norms must be fulfilled in an open tournament, and the participation of 2,400 GM luminaries in stamping new titles should be finally limited." Okay. First things first. What I would say in regards to this tweet, there are a couple things. I think, to me, this tweet from Jan, it's sort of, I don't want to say that it's out of line, but it doesn't feel like it's the right form. It didn't feel like the right time or the right situation to bring it up. Like, I don't disagree with Jan in terms of saying that there are issues, but bringing it up at a time right after someone has set the record for youngest grandmaster, it feels like it's kind of not the right situation. Is what I would say. Secondly, you do have to take into account one other thing, which is that Jan's first language is not English. His first language is Russian. So anything that's written has to be taken with a grain of salt. Grain of salt. Sorry. In that things can certainly come across differently than they're intended. But to me, just overall, it feels like this should not. It wasn't the right timing of this. Right after there had been a really there had been a new record set for youngest grandmaster. Okay, so let's keep going. I think this is the reply, but I have it all lined up. So let's just do it one by one. Okay. So this was the reply from Abhimanyu Mishra Chess, youngest GM in the world. It says, "At Jan, thanks. I am a very positive guy and would take that as a compliment to dazzle the world champion challenger. On a lighter note, it would have made more sense to suggest these awesome suggestions when you were approaching your GM title." There are a couple things. First of all, this is not Mishra. I think you're not even allowed to be on Twitter if you're 12 years old. From what I've heard, I think it's supposed to be his father. I'm not 100% sure, but that's my that's my guess. Anyway, this tweet I think is also kind of kind of not appropriate. I feel like what I would say is, like, these suggestions when you were approaching your GM title show a lack of a couple things. First of all, it shows a lack of understanding that trying to say something when you're an IM and you're not someone of prominence in the world of chess, like that's completely irrelevant. So this really doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Suggesting it when you're approaching your GM title. That being said, the first part I do actually like, which is, thanks, I'm a very positive guy. I would take that as a compliment to dazzle a world championship challenger. I think that's supposed to mean, like, it's amazing that Jan would notice this. So there's good and bad. I don't really love this tweet, but I don't think it's like a huge deal either. However, it gets progressively worse as we go on. So let's go. So next one. And this is another tweet by his dad, which says, "Please don't be late to submit more suggestions if you have for Super GM. Though there is no official title, maybe you'd like to add something there also. Can we also enforce a pandemic kind of situation and not allow players to play for over a year while chasing records?" Now, this is where it starts to get, I think, like a little bit insane and psychotic. This is sort of really the beginning of it, where it says, it says, "Please don't be late to submit more suggestions if you have for Super GM." Like, the reason that this is starting to like get to the point now where it's not about the GM title. It starts to become this personal thing where it's like, well, maybe now you should make changes for everything, kind of Super GM or other things as well. And I don't like this tweet. But again, at the same time, you have to take in mind that as far as Mishra or his father are concerned, you have to realize you have a kid who's just set the record for youngest grandmaster. And when you set the record for youngest grandmaster, it's through no fault of their own. Obviously, you're just playing tournaments, trying to get norms. It's understandable that you'd be pretty unhappy that someone's like basically trying to say, well, it's not legitimate, or the rules need to be changed because too many people are getting titles. So that's the one thing that I think is important to keep in mind with all of these all these tweets from his father. So let's keep going. Here's another Jan reply now, which says whoever Yeah, it says whoever wrote this, blink twice if you need help. Now this is just insane. I mean, I don't really know why Jan is doing this, and for a few reasons. First of all, Jan should be focusing on his world championship match. He should be doing preparation, disconnecting from social media and all this nonsense. Because when you're playing a world championship match, your focus needs to be 100% on the match. You should not be on social media doing these sorts of things whatsoever. So I think this is like, I don't know why Jan is engaging in this sort of stuff. It doesn't make sense to me at all. It just seems bizarre. It just seems bizarre. Drama is more important than becoming world champion, maybe, but I mean, already we're in July, and you know what I would say is that, you know, if Jan's going to be making these tweets and people are going to be like saying negative things, at some point the negativity, because you're obviously reading Twitter, the negativity and the IQ that you lose from doing that, it's going to have an effect. Now maybe it won't affect him at all for the world championship match, but again, reading this sort of stuff is not helpful. There's only downside and there's no upside to it. So that's why I really don't understand why Jan is continuing with this. So that's that. Let's keep going. We have another tweet now, of course, which says, my father wrote this after discussing it with me. It was a very polite reply to your arrogant message. Maybe you need help. Now this again, like, I don't understand this. Like, maybe you need help. This is like turning into this personal thing. Like, maybe you need help. I mean, like, what is this? And this is why I don't understand why Jan's getting involved in this, because again, how does this help in any way? When someone's writing when someone's writing really nasty things, or there's a lot of negativity, how does this help? How does this help in any way? If Jan reads this sort of negativity, there's only downside to it. There's no upside. So it says, maybe you need help. By the way, last tournament was not the closed invitational tournament. We don't need to prove to anybody, including you, after scoring 2739 performance rating second norm. And like, again, this is now this, like, I really have nothing to say to this tweet. I think it's just, the whole thing is spiraling out of control, and it's just unnecessary whatsoever. Like, it just makes no sense. And also, you know what else I would say about this that I don't like? This is his father. This is Mishra's father, I believe, doing it. But it makes no sense to me. The whole thing really makes no sense. Now, there are a couple of reactions. Let's keep going. Okay. This is from GM Noel Studer. He's a grandmaster from, I believe, Switzerland. He writes, the professional chess world is such a toxic place to be in. From a dirty leadership to players that prearrange games and parents that force their kids to play shady norm tournaments for records. Now, all these people are pointing at each other, discussing what's worse. Sad. So sad. Now, I'm gonna say this, and I mean, I mean, take this with a grain of salt, obviously, like everything that I say. You know, I think there's certain parts of this that are definitely true. There are other parts that are not. I think the thing with the leadership is one issue. But I would say that I would say in terms of FIDE, I've been very critical of them for various things over the years. But I do see a change where they are trying to do things differently. They are trying to make changes within the leadership. And so I really don't agree with this part, because even if things are bad, you should always strive to improve things. You should strive to push things forward. So I don't really like this part of it, because things are changing. Now, maybe that doesn't mean things are great, and there's a long way to go, but things are better now than they were even 10 years ago. Players that prearrange games. Okay, now this also, I don't really understand. Without context, it's hard to know what he's referring to. But I mean, it has happened, but it's always been something that has happened at times. So that's, I mean, again, it's what it says. Parents that force their kids to play shady norm tournaments for records. Now, this is where I kind of really don't agree with this tweet, is that, I mean, if I read this tweet correctly, it's like saying they play shady norm tournaments for records. I mean, I don't think anything happened in Hungary. Now, I'll give you some context here. About these tournaments in Hungary. This is what makes it very difficult. Is when I was 13 years old, I played the first Saturday tournament in Hungary, and I played, I think, one other tournament there. Now, what I would say is that there were a couple of players I played in the event who, when I played against them, they basically were like, okay, well, you know, if you give me $100, I'll make a draw. If you give me more money, I'll lose the game. Now, obviously, I had no interest in any of that, so it didn't come to pass. But that is one of the problems with some of these tournaments in Hungary, is that there are situations where players are willing to do these sorts of things. And I think, when you have these situations, it's more I think on FIDE to look at these tournaments very closely. It's on FIDE to look at these tournaments and understand this happens and find some way to prevent this sort of the incentives that people have for doing that. Or you could beat them for free. Also true. Yeah, exactly. So yeah. All right, let's keep going. We have another tweet. What is this? From Leonard Oots. Here's a list of the opponents of Jan and Mishra for their respective GM norms. Nepomniachtchi made his norms in Vikings AC 2006, European Championship 2006, and World U Stars 2007. Mishra made his norms in GM norm tournaments in Budapest. Again, I don't really know what the purpose of this is. Like, yes, if you look through the list of the players, obviously Jan's player, the list of the players Jan played against is much more impressive. You see Malikov, you see Almasi, Timofeyev, Arkady Naidich, Mikhail Krasenkov, Emmanuel Berg, Ralph Mamedov, Yuri Kuzubov. I mean, many of these players here on this list have gone on to be 2,600 plus GMs. So for sure, Jan's norms are more impressive. But I don't really understand the point of doing the comparison, because at the end of the day, the rules are what they are. The system is as it is, and so Mishra made his his norms legitimately, just like Jan did. So yes, you can do a comparison, but I don't really understand what the purpose of this is. Like, you have an average, and if you overperform against the average of the players, that's how it goes. So I don't really, but what it means though is it means that Mishra had to do much better against this average list of players. And sure, his norms might have been easier to get than Jan's norms were, but again, like, it's still, you could say the same thing about anything. Then you could say, it's like, for example, let's just say you look at the US Championship, which I won in 2019. Some would be like, oh yeah, well, Hikaru got, black against all the weak players. He got white against all the best players. So like, you can't really do these comparisons, because when you do that, there's always going to be something that's, quote unquote wrong or unfair. So like, I think I don't really understand the point of the comparison. He's saying the system isn't working. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. But the rules are the rules, and I think trying to, like, it feels like in a way it's diminishing. It's diminishing. Diminishing Mishra's accomplishment, which I think is wrong. Let's keep going. Okay, no need to prove. The long road to prove just started, and perhaps Nepo's message was slightly arrogant. But kid, you're talking to a world championship challenger. Okay, so this is a reply from Ivan to Mishra's father's reply, and this is actually pretty funny, because this is one thing that's very different, which is that, like, for example, someone like Ivan Sokolov, the way that he views chess is he's training a lot of these junior players on the path to becoming world champions. So it's like, yes, Mishra became a GM, but it's like, okay, you should show some respect rather than going after Jan. Now, obviously, this was not Mishra's tweet. This was his father, but it's still kind of funny to read. All right, and we have one more tweet, the final tweet, which is Emil Chess. This is from Emil Sutovsky. He's the vice. He's the director general of FIDE. So it's like being a vice president of FIDE. He says, unfollowing at Chess Mishra, Abhimanyu chess results and dedication deserve an admiration, but whoever tweets on his behalf generates too much of a negative feeling. That inevitably impacts the attitude towards the kid, and I don't want that to happen. Yeah, I mean, again, not really. I mean, I don't really understand the point of this tweet, perhaps. But I will say one thing that's important to note within the world of chess is that reputation does matter to some degree on top of results. Like, it all matters in some ways, and I think that, when you see a lot of these negative tweets from Mishra's father, what it potentially can cause is you end up in a situation where organizers will be like, we don't want to invite Mishra to our tournaments because, if we invite him, there's a lot of drama. His father is, making these tweets or doing things like that. You could have a situation where Mishra gets a lot less opportunities. So that is the one thing that I would say, which is important, is that, as far as Mishra's father goes, I mean, I think it's important that, like, I understand getting annoyed and and perhaps overreacting at the time. At the same time, it's justified, but it's really not important to keep going on with it, because there's a certain point when it's not going to help Mishra in his career and his progression going forward. Chess 24 tweeted this one. They did. Okay. Yeah, so I think, that's what I would say. It's one of those things that I think it's okay to a point, but you don't want to keep going with it, because then it starts to turn into this thing that's just not helpful for anyone. But that's the last tweet that I really had that I wanted to go over. Here's my general take on the situation. It's not good for anyone. That's the first thing I would say. It's very bad for everybody. It's bad for Mishra and its progression. It's very bad. I mean, it's bad for Jan. Completely unnecessary. Getting involved. But that's my general take. Is that it's bad for everybody. It's just psychotic. It's psychotic. Everyone's acting like a psycho, and it's really unnecessary, and it does not bode well for the game. If you look at the situation specifically, you have a very great achievement accomplished by Mishra Abhimanyu. He became the youngest grandmaster in the world at 12 years old and 7 months. So it's a very great accomplishment. And now, like, the problem is you have a situation where, instead of having a feel-good story in the media that reflects very well on chess, you have a situation where this could this could become a big issue in the media, and everyone's gonna be like, look at these chess players, like they're squabbling over the format and the system, like what is wrong with these people? And it has more potential to drive people away than bringing people into the game. So that's my general take on it. And yeah, it's bad for everyone. That's what I would say. It's just bad. It's just bad for everybody. So yeah, there you go. All right.